Ladies and gentlemen, you are back watching PEG RITV, The Ernest Facing Show. I have Sagamore William guy and his historian, Don. We decided to call an audible because there's so much information. We could not get all of this wonderful, important American history information, I want to add, into a 30-minute segment. So here we are into our second segment. So Sagamore, you've told me that you're a descendant of Simeon Simon, who was George Washington's bodyguard. We've talked about fauna. We've talked about the fact that you don't even need a Social Security number and this and that. We talked about where you've come from, where you're going. And so now, Don, I told you that I give you the floor. Where do you see the Pokanoket Nation going, even as we speak?
The Pokanoket Nation, as we're going forward, is that we're coming back and we're consolidating and we're trying to reclaim our heritage and share it with the rest of the world, something that was denied to the generations that came before me. Right now, we have the privilege that people are listening. But I have to remember the time of my great-grandmother, when we talk about Otis Wheaton, or even Simeon Simons, who the Sagamore mentioned. He was whispered these words. When George Washington asked him who he was, he told him, he didn't say he was Pokanoket, he said his line was broken and he couldn't talk about it. And he showed him that symbol, the star and the seven crescent, that was his family crescent. And
if he had mentioned something like this, would he have, I think Sagamore said he would have been killed on the spot. Is that correct?
Yeah, he could have been killed on the spot.
Right. Not to interrupt, I'm sorry, but just to show you how he had to, you know what I mean, be careful and disseminate and walk a fine line. I'm sorry, go on.
Well, even in my mother's time.
Okay.
Even in my mother's time, as a kid, one time I was playing, bragging about that I was a descendant of King Philip Metakama, and my parents called me in the house because they feared for my life. And I was not to mention that I could say I was Wampanoag, but I couldn't say I was Pokanoket. All right, and this is, I was about 8 years old at the time.
Okay. Don, continue.
So, since that time, every generation, whether it's been Frederick Wheaton, going down to Esther Wheaton, Princess Redwing, our Sagamore, going back to Dancer Star, have been moving forward to reclaim more of our identity and come out and share it with the world. And that goes back to the children and education. That's why we're working with the town of Warren. That's why we're seeking to work with the education department to let them know American history. And we're part of American history.
Absolutely.
And having that truth be
First and foremost. Let me just say that again. First and foremost. More than red, white, and blue. I mean, if you want to keep it real now, I mean, you know.
Most written about tribe in the history of this country.
The most written about tribe, the Pokanoket.
The Pokanoket tribe.
Okay.
And so going from that and letting us know that our people are here, and not just the world, but our descendants. We have to talk about what it's been like to be indigenous in the 21st century in New England and how we are invisible in plain sight. And there are these stereotypes associated with being indigenous that people in my generation have to confront and really changing that and have them be proud.
Even Hollywood, not to cut you off, and the terrible depiction of the Native American.
Oh, absolutely.
Terrible. As a matter of fact, again, pardon me for interrupting you, there's something going on with the Cleveland Indians, the Washington Redskins, the Atlanta Braves, Sagamore, I know he's blood getting you know what I mean? I mean, yeah, this is what you're dealing with here.
Yes, and so.
Like us, Amos and Andy. I mean, I get it. You know,
and so it gets to the point where you have people who are indigenous, they don't want to talk about it in school. Or we have a school where they're talking about their people, but the information's wrong. And they don't speak up, and I know because I was one of those kids. And it's happening today. I'm an educator, and I'm very clear on students to ask questions, know who you are, and don't let someone else tell your story.
That's a beautiful thing.
That's so important, so powerful.
Oh, absolutely.
And so getting that message
Can I take it away from you?
No.
And it goes into the next generation. So create an environment where our people, next generation Poconos, feel confident and proud of who they are so they can carry that torch. Because our time on earth is always limited. The Creator gives us a time to be born, a time to be died. The torch will pass, and it's up to the next generation. Think about this, 400 years. And we always talk about how there's two kinds of conquest. There's a physical conquest and a psychological conquest. And for 400 years, we've been trying to hold on to who we are. If one chain in that line of generations decided to stop and not pass on that story, it's lost. And there's been series going on with Roots about that, and people trying to find out Ancestry.com, who you are. I can find my ancestors going all the way back to 1620. Unbroken.
Stop right there. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching PEG RITV, the Ernest Faison Show. In case some of you are just now starting to watch the program, this is a very important program. We are talking about the Native American, in particular the Pokanoket, who to me are some of the most powerful people in the world as far as the Native American is concerned. I have Sagamore William Guy, who has documentation over everything. So we're not just here just with empty words, we're giving you the truth. And so he also brought his grandson, Don, to continue giving some education, as we say, on these things here. And Don, I like where you're going with it, because we are doing this part 2 show because it's too much information, and it's just too much information. So we're giving you a part 2. And Don, I like what you said. Your kids, they need to know where they come from, you know, where they're going and where they've been. And so I appreciate that. So continue.
You know, that unbroken chain, you know, there's power in knowing that, because you don't want someone else to tell you who you are.
No.
When we talk
absolutely
about
not.
our diaspora, you know, our people, there was an indigenous slave trade here in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And so we have people from indigenous descent, who from the Caribbean, the Cayman Islands, Barbados, Cape Verde Islands, and they just know they're indigenous. And that part of history is taken away from, so just bringing that back, the power of a story, the power of that narrative. And that's why, as the historian, I've not only taken on my people's oral history, but I've been looking through the documents. I go back to Daniel Gutkian, Francis Drake, all these different histories of our people, and I compare the two sources to see what's going on, so I can have that continuous chain. And as the Sagamore says, we have the evidence. We're very well documented.
Absolutely.
But the question
we got a book here. We got a 50-pound book here of information.
I got a few more.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, there's more. Yeah.
And you ask us, you know, what's our vision for the future? Our future is to be acknowledged. I would like for one day my daughter and God willing, her descendants, they come in, someone says Pokanoket, and no one challenges her. No one says, you don't look indigenous to me or Pokanoket to me. They just take it for face value.
I'm loving what you're saying.
No one's going to challenge that and say, oh, you're a made-up people, or you don't have a history. You have a history, just like someone can say that they're Italian, or that they're Quina, or wherever they're coming from. Just acknowledge that those people are there. We're looking for that acknowledgement, for the truth to get out.
Not asking for nothing more, nothing less. Oh, by the way, you were here first, too.
Oh.
That's right.
You know, so, I mean, that lends a lot of power there. I mean, there are certain ones don't want to acknowledge that, but the truth shall set you free. Yeah. It is true. And I just, again, like I say, I like where you're going with it when you start talking about your kids looking, and they're going to get older one day, and looking and seeing that their father was on the Ernest Faison Show. And get that plug in there. And wow, we know where we come from. And we really matter.
Right.
And we've dispelled these stereotypes. Like one thing I do appreciate was like the first part of the century, Jim Thorpe, talking about athletes. Here we go, talking about Native American. Jim Thorpe was voted the #1 athlete in the world. Oh, by the way, he just so happened to be Native American.
Yeah. When did that happen?
That was in the early 1900s, the first part of it.
All right, okay.
And they have yet to determine who's going to be the greatest athlete. I think Muhammad Ali should be the second, because I float like a butterfly and I sting like a bee.
I thought so too. When they did that, I thought that this guy played baseball.
Yes, sir. You're correct.
He beat a horse in a half-mile race. All right, Jim Thorpe.
You're right.
All right.
See, I didn't know this.
No, he played football. He played professional baseball.
Yes, sir.
They took
Didn't he win the Heisman too?
They took all of that away from him because he played professional sports.
That's right.
Now they're paying athletes in the Olympics and whatnot.
Right.
So I thought that, for Muhammad Ali, he was a great athlete, but it was only in one sport.
I know. Well, you're correct. Yeah, like a decathlon.
I think he should have gotten that.
Right. And I've got to look under this paperwork, because make sure that Holly and my buddy Rick, they're not getting rich on her. I figured I'd throw that in there. Holly over there, he got something to say. But yeah, you do make a good point. Ali only boxed.
Yep.
But Jim Thorpe, like I say, he ran, he outran the horse.
Right.
He played football.
Professional baseball. Professional baseball, yeah.
Yeah.
This guy was a professional athlete.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
It was in the Olympics, I mean, God.
So you've told me about the book knowledge that you want to see that people can access. Tell me about the physical things that out here in the world that you would like to see, artifacts, a la murals, whatever, that you would like to see from the Poconos that people can reference and understand the rich heritage of.
Well, where to begin? I mean, we have Dave Weed, Ruth Majors, they've done so much good work. Jeffrey Campbell from Roger Williams University.
Professor Campbell, yeah.
Yes, so Professor Campbell really worked with us. And again, this is what we want to see. We want to work with the community.
Does a place like an Ivy League school like Brown University have, because I know they have African American studies, do they have like a Native American studies on the books?
I would imagine, I'm not a student at Brown, but I would imagine at Brown University they would have indigenous studies there to some extent.
They would have to. They would have, especially in lieu of the slave trade,
Yeah, they have
et
indigenous
cetera, because Brown had their hand big into the slave trade.
Yes, indeed.
Unbeknownst to some people under the sound of my voice.
Yeah, John Brown was one of the biggest slave traders in Rhode Island.
Yeah, you did tell me that.
Yeah.
And so it only seems natural that, well, indentured servants, is that terminology that you chose?
Well, that's what they said, indentured servants. They were slaves, so that was a nice way of saying it.
Right.
But we didn't make good. Slaves.
No, you're
And so
telling me that.
basically, what they did was they took us out of this country, to the Caribbean, to the Azores, and basically on a return trip they were bringing Jamaicans, and they were the first slaves here weren't Africa. They were from the Caribbean.
Right.
Really.
Sagamore, I'm gonna ask a very penetrating question to you, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but when you look at the plight of the Indian and how he was done and put on the reservation and somewhat like the African American, really, do you have disdain for Caucasian people?
No, you can't go. I can't go back and relive the past.
That's a good question, isn't it?
I can't go back and relive the past, but we need to move on, and they need to acknowledge what they did to our people.
Right. Because some of my best friends are Caucasian.
Yeah, the first process of healing for the Native American is for those people to acknowledge it. They make like it didn't happen. It's almost like the Holocaust.
Yeah.
It's like
I would say that I like where you went with that. They're saying we're not part of that, but if you perpetuate that, then this becomes, Don, you would say.
I mean, absolutely.
And
you can't change the past, but you can change the future and hold people from separate people from their actions or the ramification of those actions. I mean, when we talk about what happened in the past, it wasn't just, again, going back to the history, us versus them mentality. We were fighting our own people. Going back to this, you have to understand a society that was dealing with the Great Dying. Imagine a society where 90% of your people died. This is what happened the year before 1619, the Great Dying.
Yeah, 1616 to 1619, yeah.
When they came here, what they find? Empty villages. They said, what a God's providence that we found an empty land that's used to agriculture. No one's here. Divine providence.
Right.
It was disease. It was plague. So a society where 90% of your people die, and then after that, the political upheaval that in the King Philip's War, Metacama was fighting his own people. So many of our people joined the English, and then we have to understand we have to fight these narratives of before European arrival that Native society was some kind of paradise. We had our own rivalries. We had our own
Of course
sex.
we did.
Some of our rivals, like our Narragansetts, they fought with us. But then we have other people like Uncas, and we had Uncas, the Mohegans, the Pequots, who fought for the English. And so you can't, again, we don't want to generalize this, but we have to understand that all people are capable of light and darkness in their hearts, and we can't just generalize one piece, because we have other people.
I like
we
that.
have
All people.
We have the Quakers, who were pacifists.
They could have stopped that war. They could have stopped it.
And the Quakers, and there was a faction in Providence, Rhode Island, because Roger Williams, he attracted Quakers as well, and they did not want to go to war with any of us. They wanted to live in harmony with us, and that faction almost took power, but Roger Williams somehow was able to hold on. And so we can't just make a general, just like we can't make a generalization about indigenous people, we can't make a generalization about the English or white people in general, what happened. We have to understand how
you cannot paint everyone with a broad brush. You are watching PEG RITV, the Ernest Faison Show. I've got the Sagamore here, William Guy, and his grandson, Don, the historian.
Strong turtle.
Strong turtle. There you go. And he's strong too. I almost broke my hand when he squeezed it.
Oh, he was a collegiate wrestler, that's why.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. I got somebody on the show just as strong as me now. Here we go. And he's strong turtle. So I mean, you want to talk about this. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. What are your thoughts about Joe Biden and this pipeline and running that gas pipeline through South Dakota and all these different places? This being sacred land for the gain of the almighty dollar.
That's what it's all about, the almighty dollar.
To be going
It is
back,
what it is, bro.
Yeah.
You know, there's a favorite quote I have by Mark Twain that says, history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it rhymes. And our conversation going back of learning from the past and making amends and not repeating the same mistakes of our ancestors. We say never again. We say, never again, but then we have the Japanese internment camps. We say never again. And then we let one atrocity happen to the other. We cry crocodile tears. And it's just going to be another situation where I teach my students in history that this was an opportunity when the U.S. could have changed, but we did something else.
Water is life. No Dakota pipeline.
That's me in downtown Providence at the, 4D Banks?
Yep.
Okay.
So that you're on the same
does
sheet
that
of
answer
music
your
here.
question?
Well, yeah, I couldn't have said it no better. Yep. Water is life. No Dakota pipeline.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, for sure. So do you think that this current administration, this is a good question, has the Native American or the indigenous people's best interest at heart?
I'll ask you a question back. Name the administration that did.
Well, look, wow, said the Southern preacher. Very well said. Okay. Absolutely not. When you start putting people on reservations and such.
When this government admits, and they haven't admitted it yet, they've apologized to the Indians out west. It all started here in New England. That's why they call us New England, because that's old England across the pond. This is New England.
Yes,
here.
it is.
That's why everything over here is the same as named towns is the same as over in England. So when they admit, they first have to acknowledge that they did something wrong. They haven't done that.
Oh, yeah.
They've apologized to the tribes out west, but it all started here. They should be acknowledging that they did something wrong. That's the first process of the healing.
And I appreciate that. And me, as a talk show host, I have to make sure I stay in the middle. But there's some things are right and some things are wrong. And you got to stand up for that which is right. And there are people under the sound of my voice who say, well, if you don't like this country, you need to get out of here. But you can't say that to you guys because you were here first.
No.
How can you? You cannot. You can say it, but you'd be ignorant in your comment because how can you tell somebody to leave their home?
Well, especially these tribes that are not federally recognized, because see, those treaties are still enforceable to this day. We go back to the Crown of England.
Yeah.
Our treaties are still enforceable, and
you have that.
And according to all of the treaties, we still own all the air rights, the land rights, the oil rights. The United States government was supposed to be a fiduciary for our wealth. They just haven't given us a dime to this day, you see? And so basically the tribes in Canada, for instance, they went and they settled with those tribes there, admitted they were wrong. They were getting back, that nation that we just signed a peace treaty with, they got over 3,000 acres of land back, or 300,000 acres of land, something like that there, in Canada. And they've also won a settlement from the Canadian government. This was years ago. I think they're just starting to pay within the last few years billions of dollars. We've never been
Recipient, yeah. So, which is the perfect
land.
question, segue question for me to you, Sagamore, and to you, Don, the historian. Do you see this government, United States, ever giving back some land and money back to the Pokanoket tribe or the Indian tribes? Do you see it ever in your lifetime?
I see it if you.
And you're an optimistic guy.
If you
the
take-
glass is half full. You're that guy.
Yeah, you have to take them to court in order to take and get this here, And basically, I can foresee that happening. Yes, I can foresee that happening. But you got to take them to court to get. They're just not going to give it up
Well, no.
without a fight.
No.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like everything
Somebody
else.
giving up their bottom line? No.
Everything else that we've approached them for, if it's covered in that Constitution, they've given it up. But they want to see how much you know before they give you anything. They're not going to volunteer
Of course
any
not.
information.
Of
And so
course not.
basically, this is how we've gotten most of what we've gotten, is because we've read them laws and so this is the way this works. When they take and give you federal recognition, they take away all your Aboriginal rights. And so basically what happens is they make you an ordinary citizen, just like any citizen is born in this country. You don't have to be Indian to be a Native American. So when you read those laws, they talk about American Indians, they talk about Alaskan Natives, and then they talk about Native Americans down here. So basically, there is a difference. That's why we don't want to become federally recognized. You're talking 501c3, come under regulations of state government. You're talking about
Non-profit, yeah, you don't want
all
that.
of this.
No,
We don't
yeah.
want any of that because we have a right to do business with foreign governments and without the permission of the United States government as an Aboriginal, because these are all written into the Article 3 of the Constitution.
Right.
So
Well,
basically, we found out that we didn't have to go that route.
Fascinating
to get
stuff. Fascinating.
And that's-
Watching PEG RITV, the Ernest Faison Show. I'm here with the Sagamore William guy and the historian Don. We're talking about all things Native American. And we hope that, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear these things, that you're keeping your mind open and you're getting educated on what was, what is, and what's going to be. And the question I have for you now, as time tries not to get away from us, is in order to be, shall we say, eligible to be called a Pokanoket, because we know that a lot of us are mixed with so many different things, called a mutt, for lack of better terminology. What percent Pokanoket do you have to be?
We don't talk percentage.
Yeah.
That's
See, yeah, did I word that wrong?
Oh, no, you made a good point because it has to do again with this.
That was my ignorance, but I didn't.
Blood quarter.
Yeah, I did the best I could.
You did all right.
I tried.
It's
Nothing
important
beats
to
a
mention.
failure but a
It's
try.
But I mean, when it comes down to this, imagine if you tried to put that rationale to someone who identified as Italian or Irish or anything else. It would sound strange.
Yeah, it would.
sound strange.
They don't question them. You
So-
say you're Italian, they don't question you.
Right.
As long as you're a blood relation, like my daughter, my wife's Dominican. My daughter has blue eyes. She's still Pokanoket because she's my daughter.
I'm getting
That's
that.
all
I
that
get
matters.
that.
That's what
I get that.
And as we go through this, that's all that matters, that you have a connection to the people, a blood connection. We're not looking for, because even that whole idea of a blood quantum, there's colonialism in that, because that's one way they disenfranchised us from the land.
Because I've talked to some Narragansetts, and they were saying in order to get free housing or education or whatever, they weren't, didn't have enough blood with the Narragansetts. Have you heard this before?
I've heard other tribes, say
Yeah.
that. I'm not going to name any
So I didn't
tribes,
sound, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't sound completely ignorant on that.
Yeah, no.
But yeah.
And that's a shame because, I've watched different nationalities come into this country, and they've all reached back when they made it, and they've helped their own kind.
Yes.
So what is wrong with the American Indian or the Native American that they can't reach back
That's right.
and take us all in? Because we didn't ask to be disenfranchised. We didn't ask to be a slave. And the bottom line is, you can talk about all these people that come into this country, if they leave this country, they still have land to go back to. The American Indians, we don't have a country. It's like we're invisible, you know, although, although the treaties say that we do.
And we would hope that a show like this makes you visible,
Right.
you know, and that's why I told you, Sagamore, I want to take this time, and you too, Don, and Tracy, Dancing Star, all who are under the sound of my voice, anytime that you have something you want to say, you have an ongoing platform. You know this too, Sagamore. I tell you this all the time. You have an ongoing platform to come on this show and to speak your mind and to let the people know exactly what's going on. None of that is backed by facts. You know, we can't have nobody on here telling no lies because that don't make me look good, don't make you look good, nobody look good. And plus, it's all about the truth.
Yeah.
And this is a beautiful thing. It's one of the greatest stories ever told, really.
Right.
If you just want to just break it down to what it is. And I would hope that one day that my grandkids will be able to look into the history books as well and see about the Pokanoket, you know, and Schmitzen and all these different things, Simeon Simon, because it is American history.
It is.
As opposed to being his story. We got to be careful with that because now you're massaging the truth and you're not giving the whole truth. And we do know that the truth shall set us free.
That's
for real.
right.
So we got about another minute and a half, and I'm gonna close it up. Give me your final parting shot on this part two, if you would, Sagamore.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the organizations that have been helping us with, you know, getting the word out there, the truth out there, and that would be Rogers University and Friends of Pokanoket.
Yes, sir.
Who was responsible for a lot of the signing that we have going up in the different towns. Mount Hope Farm, they're putting signs up there and they say Pokanoket.
Nice, nice.
Not Wampanoag, they say Pokanoket.
Right. Don?
You know, going forward again, we really want to just emphasize that our people here, and we have a word in our language, it means a wutash and stand firm.
Stand firm.
And that's how we are. We're
Wutash.
we're here to stay.
So I learned something new. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun, but we got to run. I'd like to thank the Sagamore and Don. I'm part of the largest race in the world. Oh, by the way, I'm part native. It's called the human race.
There you go.
And let us just all, can't we all, like you say, just get along? Because it's all about that. And people who get their just due. And that's what this show is all about. It's been a pleasure, gentlemen. Thank you for gracing us with your presence.
I want to thank you for having us.
Thank you.